corresponded even after the first situation with the Black Gorilla family when it came up, and we corresponded even after he was charged in prison. We corresponded by letter and all. We began to have this this conversation. But let's look at this. I told them, we sat down then, and I told them, not only did I tell the prison officials, but we talked to the people at WBAL and a number of other stations and say, look, we reduced the hiring age of correctional officers from 21 to 18. We said that police officers have to be 18 because you can't carry a gun in the state of Maryland until you're 21. Right. So police officers have to be 21. Else we would have reduced that age to 18. So if you're going to reduce the age of those who are put in these positions to 18, then you have to intensify your training. And I don't mean the regular run-of-the-mill training, because you're dealing with younger minds now. Secondly, we said this: you're putting people in situations, and this is fact, not fiction, where not only do you talk about these young ladies, they got impregnated, they made bad choices and all. Right. This is a combination of fear, right, because a lot of times these people who are the violent ones who we need to deal with inside of the prison not only threaten the people in the prison, but they threaten the people in their community. So you hire them from the same community that some of the violent people live in, and they say, look, you will participate in this activity. You will bring me this, and this, or you will bring me, or I will harm your family on the outside. And so the people who are intelligent and experts in this field have to understand the human terrain. They have to understand this is the situation we're dealing with. And so we should hire people. Black people should be hired. Right. But we should hire people and say, well, I can't put them in close proximity to people that can threaten their lives. So I need to, if I hire them here in Baltimore City, then maybe I need to assign them to a different location so they're not living under the threat. That's right. Don't for 1 minute, before you judge these people, these young ladies who got impregnated, these correctional officers who brought things in, these people, before you completely judge them, see what threat was made against them. Right. And what threat was made against them not only by the violent in prison, but what threat was made against them by the system itself. That's right. That make them participate in this kind of behavior. See what drove them to this, because they didn't join, they didn't come be correctional officers to go get impregnated in prison. That's right. They didn't become part of this process. So we have to recognize that from the start, and then set up. We said before, we have to set up systems that involve training. Right. We have to identify the threat that's on the inside and outside, and what was the origin. Why did they do this? Right. Because automatically, you've got to remember that others in the media are just going to say, these are just wicked people, these are just corrupt people. And like you said before when we started the program, they're going to reduce all of that to the correctional officer at the lowest level, the lowest common denominator. Right. That's right. And they're going to dump all of that on that, but without telling you the systemic problems that we identified 5 years ago and sat down with them and said, this problem will continue, not only here in Baltimore, but all over the place. System-wide. And system-wide. Right. And let me just add to that. Again, as Delegate Jill Carter and others have said, those hearings, it's so important for those hearings to happen now, because if you got cell phones going in and out in prison, we need the hearings now, because some of those cell phones could have been used to order hits on people who are still in the community. So we're going to wait, we're going to let 10, 15, 20 more people die by hits that may have been put out via cell phone that made it into the prison. May or may not, but we need to investigate that now before another weekend pass, before another Friday pass, so that we can save lives. To push that off is kind of a callous philosophy, saying that so what if another 100 of you die between now and the time we get to hear the hearings. We're going to push it off so that we protect, as you said, so we don't wound the governor, so we can prior politics over public safety. And we should be indignant about that. We should say, no, we need to know about this right now. This could involve the death of my brother, sister, child, sibling, my nephew. This could involve their death this weekend. If telephone call. So whether it is or not, we need to know for a fact what those phone records look like. Who made the calls? Were correctional officers making the calls? Absolutely. Who allowed those calls to be made? Were they not only made because you had the federal government involved? The logical question is, were calls made not only from here in Baltimore, but were they made across state lines? Does this involve the prison system in D.C.? And in Michigan? We're talking about cell phones, people. We're not talking about just local calls. So we need to know about that right now. There's other things that we need to know about, and that's the danger and the devastation brought about by us allowing them to move this along like this.
Yes, sir. Again, family, just tuning in, having a conversation with Dr. Tyrone Powers, revisiting and staying on top of this story, not revisiting, because there's so many and plenty that want these stories to go away. They want to sweep it under the rug. Of course, they want to make the governor look good. They want to make and minimize the actions of the Public Safety Secretary, Gary Maynard. And as we're looking at this, Doc, we got to ask about, because as you said, we're talking about an enclosed environment, an enclosed community, which has cameras, which has videos. Somebody's responsible for manning the cameras, and then some contractor, whether it's Verizon, whether it's Comcast, somebody's responsible for those cameras. And I've yet to hear anyone talk about, again, where's the video cameras, much less tracing the cell phones in terms of who purchased the phones. Got to be some owners' names on their phones. If we can purchase some free phones coming from the federal government, I know we can track some cell phones. Right. But thoughts and comments on where's the video equipment? Where's the cameras? Who are those who are putting in cameras? As we've seen those who's putting in cameras on the block. It's hard for me to believe we got cameras on the block, but we ain't got cameras on C block, D block, H block, and the other blocks inside the institutions.
Yeah, and that's again, I just have to keep coming back to the fact that that's the issue, that's the significance of them having had this hearing, so these questions could be asked and answered. Because you're right, prisons are a controlled environment, and you cannot just reduce this to corrupt correctional officers or corrupt low-level officials in the prison system. There's a larger issue here, and the answers have to be had right away. It's a life and death situation. We're not talking about the life and death of the political career of the governor or others. It's a life and death situation, because you're absolutely right. We need to look at those. We need to ask questions about those phone logs. Where was those calls made? Because let's face it, every cell phone, and even if and were these cell phones that were purchased, were these throwaway cell phones? Those questions need to be answered, because if they were not throwaway cell phones, then according to the Patriot Act of 2001, every cell phone has a chip in it that allows the government to go back and see what calls were made, even if you erase your text messages.
Right.
According to the Patriot Act, the carrier has to keep those text messages for a certain amount of years. Everybody knows that if you watch the Kwame Kilpatrick case up in Detroit, right, because they went back and got 750 of his text messages, which he thought he had deleted. Those kind of questions have to be asked, because, again, it will indicate, and I guarantee you it will demonstrate, that individuals at the highest level in this state, not just in this correction system. We're not talking about just a secretary who deals with corrections. I'm talking about in this state had to have known something.
That's right.
Or had to have allowed this to happen. The Eric Brown case.
Right.
From 4 to 5 years ago, revealed so much. And let me just say this, Brother Dern. When the FBI conducts these type of investigations, it just didn't happen last week. So they're probably looking back 10 years.
Yes.
Because they don't look, if they have information provided to them that this situation is going on inside of a prison, then they don't just look at, well, we're going to look at this situation today. They go back 10, 20 years, like they're doing in the Boston Marathon case.
That's right.
What information, who asked us to do an interview years ago?
Right.
They're looking at whether it occurred at Jessup. They're looking at all that information needs to be brought out, because then you can connect the dots to a systemic